Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session. In today's session, we will be discussing Porter's five forces model. Professor Michael Porter is a very famous Harvard professor whose management theories are taught in MBA classrooms the world over. Yes, it is part of the CMA US curriculum, but it is also part of ACCA curriculum, CA, that is Chartered Accountancy curriculum. So you keep on studying this five forces model across various curriculums. Now, what are the five forces as pointed out by Professor? So first, threat of new entry. There are basically, here Professor is concluding that there are five forces which affects the long-term profitability and competitiveness of an entire industry. So Professor is not talking about a particular company here. He is talking from the point of view of entire company, that there are few factors which affect or which can affect the long-term profitability or competitiveness of an entire industry as a whole. So from the point of view of business, if you're not in that industry and you are thinking of entering it, you can use this model. Or you are already in that industry and you are thinking of whether to exit or not, you can again take the help of this model. So what are the five forces that Professor said was first, threat of new entry. That how easily can new players enter into the market. Then you have threat of substitution. That are there substitute products available? And if yes, what are their chances that they will take your market share away? Third, buyer power. Like what is the bargaining power, negotiating power of buyers? Fourth, supplier power. What is the bargaining power of suppliers? That what is their negotiating power? And fifth, competitive rivalry. That is rivalry between the existing firms in the same industry. Now, let's look at these five forces one by one. And remember, Professor, when he pointed out this model, he meant concurrent action of five forces. That means these five forces together affects industry in the long run, either positively or adversely, that is negatively. First, threat of new entrants means how easy it is for new players to enter into a market, or what is the chances, threat that new players can enter into the market. First of all, Professor pointed out that what happens when new players can enter into a market. If you see into your slide, you will find the first point talking about increase in production capacity. Professor pointed out that often it happens that new players come with new production capacity. Now, what will happen with the increase in production capacity? See the second point. It will increase supply in the market. So companies, in order to sell their products, especially new players, may even sell it at prices which are lower than the existing selling prices that are prevailing in the market. And this can lead to price wars in the market. And what is the other danger for an existing company? Risk of losing market share to a new player. See, if there are five players in any existing industry and all have 20% share in the market, and a sixth player comes and that player gains 10%, where will that 10% come from? From the existing players only. So this is again a threat. So what are the three threats? First, your production capacity of the entire industry will increase. And because production capacity will increase, supply in the market will go up. And demand may or may not be able to catch up with the same. And therefore, producers might be willing or be forced to reduce prices to sell their products. And this can lead to price wars in the market. This is basically what Geo did. If you guys remember, Geo came into the market and started a price war with various other players. Third, risk of losing market share. This is what happened with the existing telecommunication players. They lost all their market share more or less in to Geo, and today Geo is the largest player in India, and only three companies survive. where there used to be dozens. Now, threat of entry or threat of entry, if it is a high, it is a problem. How can this be solved? By creating barriers to entry. Barriers means obstruction. So here professor is telling that yes, new players bring threats to the existing players in the market, but existing players can reduce that threat by creating barriers, obstructions to entry into the market. Now, what are some natural barriers? Natural means general barriers. First, capital requirements. Now, what does capital requirement means? Let's say a business requires a huge amount of capital to enter into a particular industry. Now, of course, companies that don't have that kind of money are automatically barred from that industry, like steel plants. There are hardly few companies which have steel plants in the or operate on the steel plants in the level of Tata Steel, JSW Steel, or SAIL, that is Steel Authority of India Limited, because thousands of crores are required to set up and operate steel production on a large scale basis. And most of the companies who don't have that kind of money is automatically barred from that market. So capital requirements is a very effective barrier. On the other hand, professor is also telling that if in a particular industry capital requirement is very low, it is very easy for players to enter into that market. And in that market, barriers to entry will be very low. Think of your local grocery store. It is one of the easiest businesses to start, right? Grocery store. You do not need any special expertise. You can just start a business with some minimum investments and you need a shop. That's it. So you see, competition is always intense in that business. The moment a grocery store starts becoming profitable in any locality, a new one opens very soon. Then a third, then a fourth, hurting the profitability of the entire industry as a whole. Second, brand identity. This professor pointed out is a very valid tool. See, today, in today's day and age, brand identity can lead to forming of very loyal customers. Means customers are loyal to only your particular brand. iPhone, Apple has mastered this art, where customers can resonate themselves with iPhone much more than what they will can or will with Samsung. So brand identity can also create a very powerful barriers to entry, because if you are in a market where customers have brand identity, means they are loyal to a particular brand, it will be very difficult for the new players to enter and capture the existing customers. So they will be discouraged to enter such a market. Third, switching cost. What does switching cost mean? Switching cost means cost of switching from one supplier to another supplier. Now here again professor is pointing out that if cost to switch from one supplier to another supplier is very high in a particular market, it's very high. Customers, even if they are unhappy with the current provider, are likely to stay with the current provider only. Think about prior to 2014 in India, I think, when SIM portability was not an option, of 15. That means if I wanted to change my SIM provider, I will have to change my number. And number was a very important thing because it was forwarded to hundreds of contacts. So many a times, even if I was maybe not happy with Airtel, I had no option but to stay with Airtel, because changing number means, especially for a business, it can become a big disruption. Then switching cost fell. SIM portability, simply you can type a message port and send it, and your number will be remain same while your service provider will be ported. This is what exactly benefited Jio, because barriers to entry were already lowered. Fourth, possibility of aggressive retaliation. See, new players, whenever they come into the market, they generally try to, or generally, production capacity increases, so they are inclined to cut selling prices in order to capture market share. If there is a market leader and there is a possibility that the existing market leader will respond aggressively to any price wars, See, if somebody is in the market for 7 or 8 years, their pockets are already full. They can afford to sell the product at break even or even at a loss for many months. But how will a new player survive that? So, in that case, also, if there is a clear market leader and there is a possibility that any price wars a small player starts will lead to aggressive retaliation by the market leader, then small players will try to avoid that. And that is also a very effective barriers to entry or to discipline price wars. Access to distribution channels. See, India is not all about cities, right? Hardly 50 crore Indian lives in cities. Best case estimates. Remaining lives in correct villages. And so if you want to capture the entire India, you need to have a huge distribution channel because there are, see, if you have traveled across India only, you would have find many places where electricity is not there properly, but a Coca-Cola or somebody selling Pepsi is always there. This is distribution channel. So even if a new brand comes in, to build that kind of distribution channel is not possible for everybody, or it may take a lot of time. So this again is a very powerful barrier to entry. Now, what is Professor concluding here? Professor concludes here generally by saying that if threat of new entrants is high in a particular market, means it is very easy for new players to enter into the market. New players will come in, production capacity of the industry will go up, demand may or may not go up. This will lead to increase in supply, price wars may happen, and this will hurt the profitability of the entire industry as a whole. So he is concluding by giving advice to business that see, if you are analyzing this model and you find that threat of new entrants is very high in a particular market, do not enter if you are thinking about it. And if you are already in that market, exit, because in the long run, average profitability of such industries will not be very high. Best example, as I said, grocery stores. Anybody can start a grocery store very quickly. So the moment the business becomes profitable, two, three, four new grocery stores open up within a radius of maybe 1 kilometer or 500 meters, hurting the profitability of the entire industry as a whole. On the other side, professor is also concluding that if threat of new entrants is very low in a particular market, means very difficult to enter into a new market. Why? Maybe because capital requirement is very high or brand identity is there. Customers are loyal to a particular brand. Switching cost is high. Retaliation threat or access to distribution channels is required. Then in that case, new players will be discouraged from entering into such a market. Here, professor says such a market where threat of new entrants is generally low. So existing firms will not kill each other for profit. Right now, where do you see? Do Airtel and Jio and Vodafone fight with each other today? No. Today, Jio says, I am increasing the prices. Day after tomorrow, Airtel will say, I am too. Me too. And day after that, Vodafone says, how did you forget me? I am also increasing the prices. So they are all increasing the prices in tandem. So here professor concludes that such an industry where threat of new entrants is very low generally gives above average profits in the long run. If you are thinking about entering into such an industry, yes, enter. And if you are already in the industry, stay. You will make huge profits in the long run. So that will be it for this session, guys. In the next session, we'll upload video on the next two portions, bargaining power of buyers and suppliers. Till then, thank you everyone. Have a good day.